Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit Kapadia coming to you on yet another day, yet another weekend, a very cold one, a very cold morning from Houston. But to spice things up and have a very heated discussion on topics of this week, I have with me Nikhil Mehra, who's a lawyer based in India, columnist, fantastic perspective, who lends us fantastic perspective on a lot of issues that you and I discuss in the week. And he's with me to talk, disseminate, and I hope piss off a lot of people when we have a discussion. So, welcome to Mind Podcast, Nikhil.
Thank you so much for having me, Aadit. It's an absolute pleasure.
हाँ so I always मैं एक चीज सीखा हूँ, like lawyer, engineer, we're all our professionals. I should always introduce you as a public intellectual because that's being told.
The reason you already made an error in my introduction. The one thing that makes my parents and everyone around me very upset is that I'm not yet a columnist. I don't write on any of these things. I don't know. I use Twitter as my amplification platform, and I do long threads from time to time. And what I don't do is say something and then just sit back and say, "Bus, I have said it." I will not. I engage with whatever interactions I get.
Absolutely. No, I should have said writer. मेरे दिमाग में था, पर columnist क्या है, मेरा भी default अंदर से निकल जाता है.
There's a better word in Bangla. It's called bakcho.
So, well, there you go. The contours of this discussion have been
made. And intellectualism, you have to understand, the cradle of all intellectualism in India is Bengal. There is nothing else.
There is nothing.
So when they say bakcho, they mean it in the sense of, yes, in the way in which Karl Marx was.
Oh, I thought you said in the way the Daily Telegraph is.
The Daily Telegraph is. By the way, I'm telling you one thing. I really enjoy their headlines. I mean, they try hard and they come up with some crackers, absolute crackers. They've got a sense of humor about it. It's just what I don't like is this pretense that every time you come up with such a headline, some government official is about to bear down on you with stakes. Nobody cares, man. I mean, really, nobody cares.
Yeah, no, and I think that's their problem because they actually want the government to care. They're like, "Koi to dekho main."
No, but I just don't think this is a problem I see across a lot of argument platforms where whichever side it may be, they can't seem to make a persuasive case even in their own minds without an element of persecution to it. Right? So until and unless they can establish some element of persecution, they can't have persuasion.
Yeah.
And this, I mean, I've never grown up in this. I've never grown up in this. Persuasion used to come from statistics, from data, from projection, from maybe a larger belief in certain principles. So you are willing to discard some amount of data for a larger sort of notion of liberty, maybe, whatever it may be. Persuasion used to come from these higher ideals. Persuasion now seems to be purely from persecution. And then it's just a race to the bottom. I am hurt more. I am offended more. I am therefore only my wishes should be accommodated in any public response.
Unfortunately,
it's a bad way to go.
No, absolutely, and it's a slippery slope, right? And actually, you and I, when we were talking about it, so I'll go over the topics we're going to talk about, and this is going to be a very freewheeling discussion, so we might slip in and slip out of topics at free will. But basically, we'll talk a little bit about this whole cricket thing that has happened away. Suddenly, Sachin Tendulkar is public enemy number one on one side of the political discourse. Then we'll talk a little bit about the whole Disha Ravi thing, and then although right now the case is not clear, every other news, there has been the Rinku Sharma case and stuff. But again, we are waiting for the facts of the case, so we're not going to go into the details and the depths of the case, but basically just the coverage and stuff. But I'll start the first thing with the Sachin Tendulkar thing. And I saw your thread. It's a fantastic thread, and I want you to talk like probably for 20 seconds on it. I'll just give the background to our listeners and viewers about it before I come to you, Nikhil. Is basically there was this targeting of Tendulkar after he said what he did about the farmers' protest, and then this Wasim Jaffer controversy erupted, where there was allegations made that Wasim Jaffer was somehow communalizing the dressing room or something. I'm just summarizing it, and Wasim Jaffer came out and said that I'm not doing this. Anil Kumble spoke in his defense, and now the left was that why the hell does Sachin Tendulkar doesn't win? Or it seems like वो जो farm loss पे बोला था और तब का गुस्सा था वो सारा वसीम जाफर में आ गया. And you had Mukul Kesavan, Ram Guha, Prem Panikkar, all of them saying, and then you wrote a terrific thread. So yeah.
Amongst my top 3 favorite Twitter handles anywhere in the world is Prem Panikkar. Particularly when cricket is going on, I engage with Prem all the time. I've met him many times. He's a gem. He's an absolute gem. So I woke up in the morning, I sort of sat around, then I logged on to Twitter for a bit after a while, and I saw this quote tweet that he had done of Mukul Kesavan's article. Mm. And that's it. I was off and running, man. This rubbish I'm not going to take anymore because... there are many layers. There's one element of this which I didn't actually. So the thread is there, and people can read the thread for themselves. So let me cover elements of this that I've thought of, or I didn't cover in the thread, or that I've thought of subsequently. But when you go after the likes of a Tendulkar, Lata Mangeshkar, these kinds of persons, often the language is about their Brahmanical background, or about their middle class background. But largely speaking, the element that to me emerges is that you want to hurt our icons, our iconic symbols. It's about a very distasteful extension of that same sort of civilizational battle which the left and the right keep fighting, right? So your icons always have to be brought down a notch or two. But these are the kind of themes in which I generally don't like to think. I like to deal with the specific, because I always feel that if you keep hitting the specific properly, you will eventually arrive at a higher quality of the general principle. And to the specific, I just didn't get what Tendulkar is supposed to say and what he's supposed to do here. I didn't get it. Look, you don't respond to a set of specific allegations with a general pat on the back. It doesn't work like that, right? And let me be clear about this. Before this whole thread had come out, for the preceding day or so, when this Wasim Jaffer controversy had broken, I also found the whole set of allegations against him to be appalling. And I retweeted a lot of stuff in support of him. And I had also said that others need to speak out in relation to him, right? But speak out with specifics. Please come out and say, I have played with Wasim Jaffer and never had this issue. I have been coached by Wasim Jaffer and never had this issue. Or I played in Uttarakhand around where he's been coaching, and I've never heard of this issue. Right? This general, he is a great... Listen, Wasim Jaffer is, by objective statistical criteria, the greatest domestic batsman in India's history. The highest number of Ranji runs, Irani runs, Duleep runs. That's an incredible record.
He's what Rajinder Goyal was for bowlers in the 80s and 90s.
Better. Wasim Jaffer would have had a fairly sustained international career as well, except we went in a different direction, which was Sehwag, right? And Jaffer did have a problem that when he was up against high quality pace and fast wickets, he used to get caught on the walk quite a bit, right? So he's just on the walk before the ball arrives, and he gets an outside edge or gets bowled quite a bit. But when he was on, he had all of it. It was gorgeous batsmanship. Firstly, it was so elegant, and he could pile on runs. I mean, he's got double hundreds in Test cricket. That's not a small thing. But like I said, so with Tendulkar, what I don't understand is you want him on everything. You want him on every single thing. And you want him to say only what you want him to say. Even in relation to the farm laws, when he comes out and says something, he does not say anything about the merits of farm laws or the farm protest one direction or the other. His tweet was limited to reasserting India's sovereignty over issues that pertain to its domestic legislation and its domestic agrarian sector, right? Without using even those words, because even those words are possibly beyond his remit. He doesn't want to engage in stuff that is beyond his remit. What you want is everybody should be a Colin Kaepernick kind of character, but without recognizing that maybe everybody in India doesn't look at systemic injustice the way in which a black athlete is bound to look at systemic injustice in relation to race in the US, because it's a completely different history. It stems from this this disease that runs through even Indian academia. I see it in Indian law. I see it in Indian Supreme Court judgments by Indian Supreme Court judges at times, which is the cookie cutting of Western academic solutions into the Indian context.
The Indian activist.
So there is no originality of thought there, right?
Yeah.
Somebody in Yale or somebody in Berkeley has come up with an idea and you want to just cookie cut it and place it into an Indian context and then decide your characters. Okay, so if they're black, someday the persecution of that, and this comes back to something we were discussing before the podcast started, that everybody nowadays only seems to be able to create persuasion for their argument by first adopting that they are the most persecuted person. So persecution equal to persuasion. Right? And so what happens is when they cookie cut this, they will say, oh, the way blacks are treated in America, let's just say for our particular context, that's Dalits. All right? And then when the context changes, oh, but that'll be Muslims now. Oh, but that'll be Christians now. Right? And when you go smaller, oh, okay, in the case of farm laws, that's Sikhs now. Right? So it's this cookie cutter mentality that makes them want also, why don't our athletes rise to this level? Your athletes have risen to many, many levels. Right, and they've risen to the levels that they wish to rise to, and they don't do more than this.
Yes.
I mean, while we're on Tendulkar, right, I'd also raise the issue of Dravid. People are telling me, why are you throwing shade on Dravid? I wasn't throwing shade on Dravid. I was throwing shade on the hypocrisy of the people who want commentary.
Yeah.
They never learned to Dravid. Dravid is, for the purpose of discussing their relative merits as test match batsmen, Dravid is a legend. Dravid is the greatest. He's not. Tendulkar is the greatest. That's clear. First. But when it comes to these comments that need to be made, but Rahul doesn't have the stature Sachin possesses. Sachin should be the one speaking. What is this hypocrisy?
Yeah.
Rahul Dravid is doing exactly what he should be doing and what he wishes to be doing, and we should all be eternally grateful for the man that he is and for the work he's doing for young cricketers in our country. He's an incredible, incredible person, right? Yeah. And he, in that incredible career and life that he's lived, believe me, you can see the man has gained more wisdom than the rest of us combined, because he knows what muck to get into and what not to get into.
He's actually and the best thing he's done is he's gone off Twitter, right? So now whatever
he's saintly at certain level. I mean, these guys are all, you know, that team when they used to play, there was something that Justin Langer used to say about them. So, you know, and I love the high-pitched voice that comes from Justin Langer in interviews with this one. My God, Tendulkar, Dravid, they're like monks. That's what he used to say. They're like monks. They get into this frame of mind, and then you can abuse them. You can do whatever you want. You just can't reach them. They're in there somewhere.
Yeah, they're in the zone.
This is how they played the game. This is the kind of people that they are. Not everybody is obligated to be outspoken, right? And certainly not everybody is obligated to be outspoken on the issues you choose in the manner in which you choose.
Absolutely. Not just that. And if you want that they only talk about issues that you care about in the context you care about, right? Then you, how the hell is that free speech? I mean, if you want to quote Voltaire every 5 minutes and want people here, they're saying whatever they want to or choosing to say.
It's not so much a free speech issue because it doesn't involve the state. It's a discretion issue. It's a liberty issue. But I'll tell you what just to round off this particular specific issue, because I know there are other topics you want to cover. If you want to actually address, and this is what I've been trying to do with people who have engaged with on this thread, if you want to actually address what's happened with Wasim Jaffer, you're pointing the gun in the wrong direction. The gun has to be turned to the BCCI. They can't take the Wasim Jaffer resignation as the end of the issue.
Yeah.
They need to figure out what actually happened here.
Yeah. And there needs to be an investigative report, like a proper investigative report.
And I can't also go into, from these various merits, demerits, and what you're seeing on social media, can't really determine facts. Some things, you know, my heart in Wasim Jaffer's favor. I do rate the man incredibly, and it's very sad. His nephew was going to be the next big thing. Arman Jaffer just hasn't seemed to push his game along to that extent as yet. But even in his reply, Wasim Jaffer says, I never invited the Maulvi to the team meet or to address the team. So a Maulvi did come to the team.
Exactly.
Why? We don't know. Right? I'm not saying that this makes an allegation true against him or untrue against him. But there's something to figure out here because, as a lawyer, let me tell you something. Even the most ham-handed members of the state and of the government, when they come after you, they come after with something. They'll have a kernel of something somewhere.
Yeah.
You need to cover their bases at some point. Right? So maybe this needs more from the BCCI, and that's the pressure that should come, that you need to figure this out, because this is such a desultory, despicable, and disgusting controversy for Indian cricket to suffer from. And I thought Mohammad Kaif hit the tone and tenor of this perfectly.
Yeah.
That not in Indian cricket. We're not going to tolerate this. You need to clean this stuff up immediately.
And let's not forget, Indian cricket is truly the most pan-Indian thing ever. In terms, it transcends languages, religions, many barriers. Right? You're watching the India-England series. Just hit the thing on Hotstar and see how many languages the whole cricket coverage is simulcast in. Right? So,
and to add to that, going back to Tendulkar, why he's so mammoth. I mean, Tendulkar's an icon at another level to any other athlete in this country's history, and people may not like to hear this. People may not, so like lazy comparisons are drawn. Pujara and Kohli are like Dravid and Tendulkar. No, I'm sorry, they're not.
They're not even
close. They're really good, but they're not Dravid and Tendulkar. Dravid and Tendulkar should be the pride of Indian cricketing history. Along with Gavaskar, along with Kapil Dev, along with now Ashwin and Kumble. These are the pride of Indian cricketing history. They'll sit in any pantheon of greats alongside anybody, and you can make an argument.
And was not even the Indian, like the world cricketing history. Right?
No, but I'm saying in the pantheon of Indian cricket, in the pantheon of cricketing history, they will sit there, right up there.
So
Tendulkar became what he became. Why? Because the marketing grew so big. Why did the marketing grow so big? People casually say, "Oh, because cable television exploded." But Sachin Tendulkar was revered in every single corner of this country.
Yeah.
Right? That's where does that lead to eventually? Now you have cricketers coming from every corner of this country.
No, and one thing I'll tell you.
Right.
You broke up for a second, Nikhil. If you can just repeat that point.
Yeah. No, so all I was saying was, now you have cricketers coming from every corner of the country, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you say it's a pan-Indian sport. It's not just a pan-Indian sport to viewership. It's a pan-Indian sport to participation. And participation comes in many forms, one of which is viewership. The other is sending your kids to these training camps to play the sport everywhere and anywhere that you possibly can. The BCCI actually deserves a lot of credit for, in a sense, the democratization of cricket. They managed it from a very closed, shady, corrupt organization in the late 90s to early 2000s to something which is still fairly, it raises a lot of fingers against them, but they've got the democratization process really well.
No, it's like the Churchillian quote, "Na, democracy is the worst, like the best form of government because everything else sucks," or something. But no, I'll tell you, I'll complete this particular point with 2 points on this about Sachin. Right, first thing is that this is something that Bob Willis or some England player said, that it's not about what just he does on the field; it's also what he does off the field. Which is why what makes Sachin great, right? He would sort of never react the way a Virat does or something. This is not comparing. This is just, that's how he is. That is why whenever he went out to Australia, a place like Australia, crowds used to give him a standing ovation, even if he scored like 5 and got out, right? And
they gave standing ovations on 2 tours, because the first tour in 2007, they assumed it's his last one. They gave him a standing ovation through that tour. He popped back in 2011. They gave him a standing ovation through 2011. And by that, it's very touching as an Indian cricket fan. He would come out. I mean, he'd come out of that dressing room and start the walk, and they were all on their feet, instinctive. And it's a global thing. It happened in South Africa. It happened in England. It happens wherever he goes. That's the scale.
And my second thing is that people might say that he was on the TVs all the time on the 90s and stuff, and that's true for commercial and all. But you could not control why every Indian, as soon as Tendulkar got out, turned off the TV for a few minutes. Even if India was in a winning position. वो एक natural instinct था, because he actually did ungodly things. And I was actually watching a very famous game, the India-Sri Lanka game in the 1996 World Cup, which was the end of Manoj Prabhakar's career. And India scored 270 odd.
137.
So 137.
There's a third umpire run out that was not given against him when he was 40 odd, boss. I still remember it in 90s. My heart dropped when I saw that replay. I was like, खत्म हो गया.
And exactly, and India was 28 for something in 10 overs, and then Sachin took them to 270 in 50. I mean, just single-handedly. It's unbelievable, the kind of things he
Was
did.
from 96 to about 2000, 94 to about 2003, 2004, which is quite a bit. 10 years at that level. The batting quality is unreal. It's unreal. The thing with Tendulkar isn't statistics. It's there'll be a brilliant ball board, and then there'll be just the response will be this geometrically perfectly aligned back foot cover drive on the up, and it takes your breath away. You literally go like, whoa.
Yeah, so
it does that to you, and you just get attached to what you're watching.
Yeah, so geometrically correct is the perfect, because in that way, him and Lata Mangeshkar are very similar. Lata Mangeshkar is also that, that sur, that bass, like if the music, wo jo lagta hai, just, yeah, that's it. So, anyway, so moving on to a couple of other topics, and as we enter into our last 20-25 minutes, I want to first have to address this. Or ye mere dimag mein hai. This, have you seen this Englishman whining about the pitch in the India-England second test match, where like every 5 minutes
I've been whining a bit about the pitch too. Yeah, I'll tell you what, I love turners, and wickets should turn. The red soil anyway allows for grip and the ball will turn. There's no doubt about it. What I don't like is chunks of the pitch coming off from like the first ball that was bowled. The first ball, boom. That doesn't see, you can't, people then turn around and say, and I don't know if you've noticed this trend throughout this test match, the pitch dies down in the second session. So if you make it a second session with some wickets in hand, you can get some runs going. The problem for England was on day 2, they arrived into the second session, barely anything left. They had nothing in the tank, right?
Yeah.
But even then, in the second session, for a brief bit, folks looked comfortable. Pope looked comfortable. Very unlucky dismissal, but also simultaneously a brilliant dismissal, because that catch is something else altogether.
Unbelievable, yeah.
Right? But the pitch didn't get him there. And the pitch probably wouldn't have in that second session. So, those vagaries I understand. So, what happens is today people will say, oh, but we scored so many runs on this pitch even in our second inning. But you were obliterated in that first session.
Yeah.
You were obliterated. And then the pitch naturally dies down in that second session for a while, and you did better.
Yeah.
Right? So, I do have a problem with pitches that behave this way. And maybe this is something of a bias, because honestly, I love the fast bowling skill more than the spinner skill.
Yeah.
So I can live with green tops more, because green tops don't break.
But no, so green tops are very pretty to look at, no? Because like they stay up, and it's this beautiful lush green pitch which seems like a part of the outfield. Spinning wickets actually look very terrible, because you have cracks and you have pitches. I personally love spinning wickets.
But I think green tops do equalize things a bit. All teams have decent fast bowlers.
No, but
you never know. The fast bowler finds his rhythm, finds his length. The Sri Lankan fast bowler can come and destroy England on a green top at Lords.
No, but so I don't mind if there is one pitch in the series like this, right? I can understand.
But I think both of us know, as cricket fans, we lost that first test and we were like,
what?
Have to bury them. So screw the rules on the pitch. We're getting rid of the curator who made a firmer pitch. We're getting one which is old school. Nobody in the world can beat us on this pitch kind of pitch.
This is Azhar Kumble Wadekar area, where Venkatapati Raju and Rajesh Chauhan were world-beating fast bowlers.
Whenever a series, we'd always make sure the final test of a series was Kanpur. Good luck to you playing us in Kanpur or in Ahmedabad.
No, even Wankhede, which was like even Mumbai, which was actually very. No, go on. Yeah.
Go on.
No, I was saying
so Wankhede, the pitch. Eventually, he scored enough runs in Wankhede. Runs get scored, and Wankhede has another attribute to it because of the breeze. Those used to be open stands now. The new Wankhede has shut those stands now. There used to be open stands. If you watch the 2001 series, the first session of the 2001 Mumbai test between Australia and India, you'll see the number of wickets Damien Fleming and McGrath were getting because of swing and seam.
Yeah.
Right? And as usual, Tendulkar comes out and suddenly all looks placid, a few counter-attacking boundaries. The straight driving from Tendulkar in those 277s that he made, man, it's something of another level. But, those pitches don't bother me like that. The one that bothers me from Wankhede is the 2004-2005.
I was just about to come in with that.
That was a lottery. That was just Michael Clark was going to get a spinner.
No, but usme bhi, when Sachin was scoring that 55 and hit probably the biggest six that has ever been hit on the Wankhede, because Brett Lee still talks about it. I was watching the Indian Australia series. He's like, he smashed the ball, and I was like, ye gaya seedha Gymkhana's mein. He's like, it's not bad.
The other one was the Lakshman Tendulkar partnership.
Right, that's when he hit the six. Unbelievable.
Against them.
Yeah,
No, I don't want to, on this talk of all the pitch, what I will accept is I don't want to underrate for a moment just the sheer technical brilliance and artistry of what Rohit Sharma did in that first two sessions. Incredible batting.
Incredible. Or what Ashwin did yesterday.
What Ashwin did yesterday in terms of his bowling as well. The variations of it, the same spot, he will bowl different kinds of spin. I mean, you've got to love that.
No, and he scored a century, right? Like,
Century,
so
yeah.
He's a very gritty customer. Like, he just won't give up. Like, that's
I've been saying this since the Australia tour. I think he's a monster of mentality, man. That guy's mentality. There were times when in the middle of his career, he was bowling too many variations, so his efficacy had reduced.
Yeah.
Right? But and he was starting to bowl like silly shit. He went into the IPL, he was suddenly bowling leg spin at times. What is this rubbish? Stick to it. The moment he sorted himself out, and it takes, some kind of humility and some kind of introspection to sort yourself out, and went back to the old off-spinning stock ball. Right? On a turning track, on a turning track, Aadit, is a question I was discussing today with Prem. In fact, I was discussing this. Indian spinners aspire to be leg spinners. Because on a turning track in India, leg spin is pointless in a sense. It's nowhere near as effective as off spin. The reason why leg spin and away-going deliveries abroad work is because that brings into play more catchers, right? I mean, these tips come into play, the gully comes into play, and obviously the outfield is in play for everybody in any event, right? And so you're willing to compromise on the loss of the chances of an LBW and a bolt to accommodate those chances, right? But in India, it's the off spinner actually on these kind of tracks that brings more catchers into play, because it's the off spinner who's likelier to get the glove or the pad and bring the close-in catchers into play. Yeah. If he bowls the straighter one, he brings the slip into play, and he's anyway got LBW and bolt. So the off spinner is the only one that brings every form of dismissal into play, unlike a leg spinner. And that's why Indians don't produce leg spinners. We've just never produced a great leg spinner, and you don't see hordes of Indian kids, even post-Warren, wanting to bowl leg spin. We just don't.
Even
because we realize the utility doesn't exist. So Abdul Qadir is an example of a great subcontinental leg spinner. But he was a great subcontinental leg spinner with an outstanding googly. Even as a leg spinner, you can't do it without that surprise incoming delivery. And it's got to be a high-quality incoming delivery.
No, and that is what made Kumble the greatest in the last 10 years, because he developed that googly, because he struggled in outside of India.
In 2003, when we went to Australia, that two-finger googly came out, which on screen used to seem so obvious, but clearly not so detectable for batsmen, because he got a lot of wickets with it.
And he got Gilchrist so many out. And for me, why Kumble is amazing, I was watching the 2009 IPL where RCB and Deccan Chargers were playing, and Kumble brings himself on the first over, and I'm telling my dad, I was like, boss, googly is coming. Gilchrist is out the third ball to a googly, right? That is the most...
There's plenty of times he's pitched and hit the off bail with Gilchrist.
No, but one thing I have to ask you, do you think in the redevelopment of Ashwin, those Kumble years as a coach helped? Because I think that's what helped. I think that's where his temperament did get sorted out, because Kumble by default is a bowler's coach.
Man, if you followed my tweets ever, I'm no fan of Ravi Shastri. And I think it was... Look, there are two things that to me define the Kohli captaincy, right? One is no Indian captain has had this scale of resources in both batting as well as bowling, right? No, I mean, and by that, and frankly, particularly because of the bowling, I don't think any captain in the world has the level of resources that Kohli has had at his disposal at different times.
Yeah.
Right, and yet the results don't match up to that kind of resource allocation, right? And that's because from test match after test match abroad, you can see obvious sectorial blunders. They're not errors. They're not 50-50 calls. They are blunders. From dropping Ajinkya Rahane for the first test in South Africa, to this persistent selection of Hardik Pandya, hoping that this is the next great all-rounder. In the media, upping him up and saying things like, this is the next Kapil Dev. Are you kidding with me, man?
Or Prithvi Shaw.
Oh, Again, you can go back to my Twitter timeline. 18 months I've been screaming, Shubman Gill is the next big thing. Shubman Gill is the next, because I've seen this guy bat.
Yeah.
The moment he arrived to bat, before he had faced a ball in Australia, I said, okay, get ready. Your next great Indian batsman has arrived. And he will be. He's got a little bit of ironing out to do, but it's just, he's the only one in this modern game from India who doesn't have this off middle guard disease, first and foremost.
Yeah.
And he doesn't have the forward press.
Yeah.
Or the going across. He does what Tendulkar used to do, which is stay stable till the ball's delivered.
And punch it.
And punch, right? So he minimizes error. And he's still an attacking batsman. And, you know, we talk about Pant on that day 5 in Brisbane. Man, that morning innings by Shubman Gill dominated that session. And without him, we don't get started for that chase.
I think the turning point was that Mitchell Starc over where Pujara hit 2 fours and Shubman Gill hooked him for 6 and hit a boundary. That was the turning point.
That is pretty much the Shankna that we're coming for you.
Yeah, exactly.
This is not going to be an easy day.
Exactly. So, terrific thing. But as we get to the closure of the podcast,
but just to make a point, I would have loved for Kumble to continue. I don't buy this rubbish about he was too disciplined. He was too much of a disciplinarian. I think Kumble would not have made those same selection errors. I think we would have had a bigger pool of bowlers maybe. And I think younger cricketers would have developed very well, because I think the Kumble-Dravid supply line would be a terrific supply.
I mean, for example, can you imagine on that ranked Turner in Southampton, if Kohli goes with 3 fast bowlers and 1 spinner, right?
There is no limit to the times he's done these things.
I mean, it was a square turn. It was as...
I look at RC, I hate IPL, okay, with a passion. I cannot distinguish one match from the other. People say this was a thrilling chase. Every match seems like it's a thrilling chase to me. It's all the same to me. But I looked at that semi-final, virtual semi-final last year, and I looked at the team sheet and I said, he's messed with the batting order again. Why? With Kohli, I'm left scratching my head too often with why. Why did he do this? That World Cup in 2019, that disaster against New Zealand was 2 years in the making. You didn't settle on a number 4 for 2 years. And then you went with an all-round cricketer who you refused to play. You, for 2 years, 2.5 years before that, you chose to attack in your bowling with 2 outstanding spinners. They got hit once on a short boundary by England. On a short boundary, by the way. And you dropped. So, what is your planning? What is the courage of your convictions? But you want to be all intent. I mean, this intent ke chakkar mein, I saw in South Africa, Murli Vijay's last series, Murli Vijay was more than competent test match opener who played excellent backs to the walls innings against England in the preceding tour, 2016 or so, right? I've seen Murli Vijay take a middle and off guard and chasing balls outside off. This is not his game. I've never seen Murli Vijay take anything other than a leg, maybe a leg in middle guard, and stay very straight on the stumps.
Yeah.
So these are the things that I think Kumble would look at and say, not needed. Not needed. Whereas Shastri would look at it and say, yes, this is the intent with which we want to play. But intent isn't everything. You've lost test matches and World Cups because of this misplaced idea of intent with no capacity for execution for it.
And I'm going to tell one thing. I don't think, they are going to Ahmedabad, where I don't think the wicket is going to crumble as much, because I don't think it will be the same wicket. Plus, in a day-night test match with a pink ball against Jimmy Anderson, boss, it's not going to be easy to win this game.
I listened to a fair few of these podcasts. I think the guy you were talking about in this context is a guy called Simon Hughes.
Yes, the analyst.
Yeah, the analyst podcast. And it's a great podcast otherwise. I love listening to the other side. And I also listen to Test Match Special with Michael Vaughan and Jonathan Agnew. Jonathan Agnew is an absolute joy to listen to. And Simon Hughes is very good otherwise. But he does have... he is very, England first. In a certain sense, it's fine. It's perfectly fine. But I think he did jump the gun a little, because he had to sort of look at the pitch and say, okay, but it's not doing so much in the second session. And more importantly, your batsman messed this up. You don't go in on a spicy wicket first up looking to sweep everything. There's just too much bounce for the sweep. Folks didn't. Folks used his feet and he batted really, really well. They might be able to do this now for a bit. I mean, I would... For the sake of the competitiveness of the series, I hope they don't get bundled out in like a session and a half. I hope they bat out most of tomorrow.
No, I mean, first of all, they did a dumb thing by sending a night watchman. What are you doing by sending a night watchman on a rank turner? That poor bugger is not going to survive. He was out on the first ball, and it was like such so obvious. Yeah, I'm like, then Root comes and plays out 2 overs. I'm like, this is how it's supposed to work. And I think I'm reminded of a Sachin quote where someone sent a night watchman, and Sachin looked to the manager and he's like, "Can he bat better than me?" And the manager is like, "No." So like, why the hell did you send him there?
Tendulkar did use a night watchman, I remember, once or twice in his career, right? It's the same thing. He probably used a runner. The first time he used a runner in his entire life was that centurion innings against Pakistan. And he was immediately proved why he didn't want to run. His mind was about, ye sala theek se bhagega ki nahi bhagega. It's suddenly you're not thinking about the stroke play, right? You're not, these are quirks, yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't think night watchmen have been used that much recently, no? I mean, I think teams have got past this rubbish unless they are unless they are tail-end batsmen of genuine batting quality.
No,
because a lot of teams have that.
I love Rahane as a captain, but he also had this dumb snafu using Jasprit Bumrah as a night watchman. The only problem was that happened to be Adelaide 2020. So uske baad everyone came like and played like a night watchman. So it was not Rahane. It was Kohli who used it. I forget. Kohli was the captain.
Dumb shittery is always Kohli.
Kohli, yeah. I don't forget. But Kerry O'Keefe, and contrary to a lot of what other people say, I find Kerry O'Keefe very entertaining because I find him to be
He's hilarious.
No, he is the Australian Sunny Gavaskar. Sunil Gavaskar comes and riles everyone up. So Sunil Gavaskar was on Hindi commentary yesterday, and he said this wonderful line. I didn't listen to it, but I read it on Twitter where he said कि हाँ उनको रोने दो पिच के बारे में, हमें भी क्या है कि अगर आप न्यूयॉर्क और न्यूजीलैंड नॉट न्यूयॉर्क न्यूजीलैंड और इंग्लैंड में जाओ तो ऐसी पिच आती है जहां ऐसा लगेगा कि गाय और बैल चरने आ जाएंगे, इतना घास होता है पिच पे, तो उसमें क्या होता है. I mean, and then he goes on a rant. But my point is, you will have a couple of jingoistic commentators, which is what makes cricket fun. Not everyone needs to be a very unbiased storyteller, or not everyone needs to be as boring as the current commentary team is. Yeah, they put me to sleep.
I think dissing Sanjay Manjrekar is a national pastime nowadays with Indian cricket fans.
Yeah.
And he is such a panoti. He comes on and disasters will strike.
Disasters will strike. Absolutely. But, ye to chalta rahega. But in the last 10-15 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about another thing that has dominated the news this week. Is the whole farmers' law, and then, you had Disha Ravi arrest and so forth. And what the weird thing that has happened since then is they have used that arrest to sort of make a point about how Claudia Webb and others were talking about gender and climate justice and all that nonsense, right? You have the ironic thing is, and Claudia Webb is a member of parliament from Leicester East in England. And to give you perspective, what has happened is she was a very big Jeremy Corbyn supporter. Leicester East is a Labour constituency where Keith was. It's an Indian-dominated constituency, had won since 1987. I mean, that's an insane run, right? Almost 33 years. And then Bhupendra Dave, I think he's a British Gujarati, if I'm not mistaken, who has come, who was the Conservative candidate, actually made a lot of forays, and Claudia Webb only won that seat by 6,000 votes. So she thinks by taking this maximalist position, she's going to get the extremist Sikh vote in London, which might lean towards the whole Khalistan idea, and the British Pakistani vote, and basically split it along that line, because the Conservatives are coming for Leicester East and they hope that they can swing it back. So wahan se, I think that is where this is all coming from. And the irony is, in her campaign, when she was questioned on her stance on Kashmir, because she is one of those people who said about self-determination of Kashmir and stuff, she said, let's talk about internal issues in this election. And she's proceeding to do exactly the opposite in here. So this is the perspective. One is the demerits of the Disha Ravi arrest or something, which, is it may have been ham-handed. We are not so sure. We're not sure about the facts of the case. But the second thing is, you talk about climate justice and you support people who do stubble burning. What logic is this?
These are not thinkers, they are label makers. They have to talk in only these labeled kind of language. They have to use these labels to catch their own attention, frankly. Otherwise, they don't feel like they run any logical contribution to anything. Self-determination. This has been dealt with by international courts for a long time. Anybody who wants to understand the law of self-determination should read the West Africa cases. Self-determination as a concept was developed almost entirely in the context of colonialism and imperialism, right? This is not as if the breadth to the principle of self-determination that these people come up with. You know that famous joke in India, USA, Ulhasnagar, Sindhi, right? The way people go, Ulhasnagar can have its own sovereignty also. Because the concept is like this. We have a territory, we are a people. This is not the way self-determination works. So I only bring that out to say these people don't know what they're saying. Right? And so therefore I treat them on those kinds of merits. You will absolutely never ever find me responding to quote tweeting, talking about, Claudia Webb or Boris Johnson's doing our job in this count. Who was that? There was a Sikh MP who had raised the same issue in the House of Lords, in the House of Commons, I think. It was swatted away by Boris Johnson. Why are we? Why should we engage with all this? Let it go. Let it go. It doesn't matter.
So my thing about the whole,
but so to the larger issue that you're raising, and I think what you were driving at is, and this is where I think these kinds of cases become, well, there's something to certainly observe, and they are interesting. Sedition law in India has always been about incitement to violence. That's the norm that we've set up, that the law of sedition requires an incitement to violence, a direct incitement. But all those cases, they originated in the context of individuals who were sloganeering against India. Right? So you don't have this threat of any incendiary violence coming from some random person making these kind of comments. So it was a very easy legal policy choice for the Supreme Court to turn around and say, wait, what is this? This is free speech. There is no direct incitement. There is no threat. Right? Now, if you have a mass movement in the context of that, if you're making certain comments, and those comments have the capacity of riling people. So, to this end, if people are also pushing for this, they may want to look at what Kapil Mishra's comments were in the context of the 2019, January 2020 Delhi riots, right? Because he may also be speaking in generalities, but that may have led to consequences when he's doing it in the context of an impassioned crowd, right? And that is similar to what they're trying to prove in these kinds of cases here. But largely what it looks like in Disha Ravi's case looks to me like the first time they want to go and attack the concept of Infowars, Psy-wars through the use of sedition without, therefore, having any need or any basis for turning to the concept of incitement to violence. Certainly not direct incitement to violence. And amongst friends, I had told them that the moment the toolkit came out, I was actually trying to be on an enforced Twitter break, but that toolkit came out and I said, this is rubbish, right? Because I'll tell you what it was. The toolkit by itself doesn't bother me. I've been a corporate lawyer in America. Toolkits are like checklists for me. When you form checklists to execute certain things, right? But this toolkit comes out, and it comes out in early January, and it sets timelines, and then you get this horrendous, and this was the thing that really got me, this horrendous global hashtag about the Prime Minister wishing to commit genocide against farmers. Which is extremely incendiary, extreme incitement, right? It was very bad. That comes, then the violence on the 26th of January. Or one or the other comes before, whichever it was, right? When you add all of these things up, I was sitting there thinking, I generally come out always in support of free speech. But I thought, this is starting to get to a point where certainly under Indian law, but generally under the laws of a lot of countries, you're going to have a problem with disaffection laws to the state, treason laws or laws of that sort. It's starting to reach that limit now. Because these things are starting to connect. Now, having said that, when it comes to Disha Ravi, we don't have enough facts. You can't say shit in a toolkit. Because if that's all you have, then the toolkit is in fairly general language. How do you draw the evidentiary connection between the moment she said the toolkit, she edited the toolkit, to sort of violent actions that occurred, to her contributing to this genocide hashtag, so on and so forth, right? So it can't be just the toolkit, you have to connect further.
Correct.
Now, that brings me to what has been one of my bugbears. I've done podcasts on this in the past. I've tried to argue this in courts. We have a very oppressive criminal procedure system where the arrest comes first, and the evidence comes later, and sometimes the evidence never arrives at all. Right? In a lot of countries, particularly Western democracies, because their investigative procedures have evolved to that degree, the rule is generally within 48 hours of arrest, you have to charge a person. If you fail to charge them, if you have insufficient evidence within 48 hours of arrest, you have to release them. So they don't end up with these systems of going to go and get bail from a magistrate every single time. Right? The police can do it themselves.
Yeah.
We also have bailable, non-bailable cases, but bailable cases are extremely minor, mostly minor, and non-bailable is virtually everything else. So it's an oppressive system in as much as you are now arrested, you put over 5 days police custody. When somebody makes the argument that she needs to be investigated, I'm totally on board, because I look at that toolkit and I look at certain ensuing events, I'm on board. But does she need to be arrested and her liberty curtailed? Because I know what happens. 5 days police custody pass, right? The police will come out and say, we want more custody. Magistrate may deny. 5 days is a lot. We're not giving you more. And she's sent to judicial custody. As standard operating procedure, sent to judicial custody. Judicial custody is your Tihar jail, your Arthur Road jail, etc. Police custody is when you're kept in the thana. And you can be called upon to ask questions or answer questions at any point.
Anytime, yeah.
Right? Now you're sent to this judicial custody. And for the first 14 days of that judicial custody period, it's like the police have a cash card. They can go investigate other elements of this case, and until those 14 days expire, 30 days expire, they can come back and say, we have net 14 days of police custody we can take over that 30-day period. We've taken 5, we'd like 2 more. Because we found this, we need to ask her all of this. The judge will allow it. But potentially allow it, potentially deny it, whatever it is. But once you're sent into that judicial custody, and with this system, 30 days se pehle, you can forget about bail. Right? So once you get into this kind of system, your liberty is compromised for quite an extended period of time. Let me give you another example. A poor girl in Bangalore who had raised those silly "Long Live Pakistan Zindabad" slogans in a rally where Owaisi was present. Right? And it just got so communalized. I mean, it's a 21-year-old girl. She was in jail for 6 months. So the problem is, yes, she must be investigated.
Yeah.
Yes, please look at whatever information you want to find in relation to the toolkit.
Yeah.
But our system is so oppressive in the way in which it goes about this, that there is a simultaneous power in the hands of the police validly exercised to investigate, and a simultaneous demolition of your fundamentals.
Yeah, so that difference is the key, that when they do what. But coming to the closure of the discussion is the whole farm laws bill. So my whole thing was, if there is nothing found, actually give her a microphone and allow her to say what she did, because there is a clip floating around where she was putting out her views, and it was so dumb. I mean, I'm sorry, there is no other way. It was just so ridiculous. I'm like, isko bolo jo bolna hai, and put that clip out on Twitter that this is her perspective. The biggest argument against her is her speaking and getting a perspective, because we were talking before the podcast, Nikhil, that the farm laws are probably a bigger thing, you were saying, than even the Narasimha Rao reforms of 1991, because those were made out of India didn't have a choice, right? You do the reform or you perish. The farm laws India did have a choice to go back to the socialist sort of thing, and this last 6 weeks have been interesting. It even prompted someone like a Shekhar Gupta and T.N. Nayanan to come out and say that, boss, this might be our first private enterprise, like this might be our first market-friendly government in the history of India, which says that being a private player is not a crime, right? Because abhi privatization was like India's support towards Israel. Since 19 till 95, we are not even acknowledging, but we still want them. So same way, India was not even acknowledging that private industries matter, but you still want them. So I don't know, what is the perspective on that?
Yeah, so what a turnaround by the Modi government was like.
Oh God, the first 6 years,
first term and for so long.
Not the first
what are they up to? Where is this economic?
Yeah, the first 6 years and now the 6 weeks.
The first budget after winning was the most appalling budget, right? That was the one with the CSR criminalization and all kinds of things. Yeah. It was madness, that budget. And they had to basically backtrack on everything. And for to be hearing that in lockdown, they passed these farm laws, they passed that labor reform code. And I would urge everybody to read a thread by this really bright girl called Sargun Kaur. And I think she goes by the Twitter handle @SargunK, which maps statistically the immediate impact of labor reforms on employment rates in Rajasthan. It's a stunning thread, and it makes an elaborate and important case, right? That's labor reform, important element to all of this. Because what happens is agricultural reform, the idea is you're going to move people out of agriculture as a result of this. You're going to make agriculture productivity more efficient. You're going to make its sale more efficient. You're going to put a better price in the hands of the farmer. And if you read enough about this, today the theory is the farmer gets 28% of the consumer price. So you're going to increase that and you put better prices in the hands of the farmers, but that will still not be sufficient to sustain 50% of the population within agriculture. So they'll start moving out, and if they start moving out and you don't have labor reform, then you're going to have a choke within the economy again.
Absolutely.
Right? So all of these things go hand in hand, and these are seminal moments. And so you have your, again, people keep saying we have the right to protest. So what has he stopped you from protesting? You've laid siege to the city. Kya problem hai tumhe? Wo karne de rahe hain. Other than this one case of that farmer who fell off the tractor, that's a controversial case because there's a petition pending in the High Court saying he was shot first. Okay, there is not a single other reported case of a round of bullets being fired by the delegates.
In fact, the Indian government has been remarkably accommodating. I don't think this would happen anytime else with any other protest in any other state.
Which is what makes me upset about the illiteracy of some of these people, right? Whether it be Justin Trudeau or the others saying the right to protest. First and foremost, there is no general right to protest with nothing underlying. I mean, this is not a walk in the park, yeah. You can't go disrupt civil society because you feel like protesting what? Nothing. You have no idea what. That's not good enough, right? But secondly, you've been allowed to protest. So you keep tweeting about in support of protest, of the right to protest, in some vague generality, like we are idiots. You come in and you say, oh, I only support the right to protest without giving my tuppence on the actual cause of the protest. Who are you fooling? Who are you fooling? Exactly. We know you're dealing with your internal constituencies, right? Yeah. So when I see all of these things together, I really start to wonder, what are people supporting? Why are they doing it? And is this only all about Modi?
Yeah, essentially that's what it is. And the funny thing is, right now when you have this Meena Harris and others tweeting about it in America, Meena Harris ka case ye ho gaya ki she banne chale the Priyanka Gandhi ban gaye Robert Vadra. That's what it seems like, because she wanted to be.
You're talking about the LA Times article.
Exactly. That's because
again, Meena Harris is the kind of situation at which my first response is, I don't care.
Boss, no, I'll tell you this though. It's very interesting. The reason why it's not that about the article that surprised me. I suspected this article to come out within the next 1 or 2 years because her aunt still wants to get elected president and she does not want to. I almost feel like why it was chosen to be published in LA Times. Right? This could have been published by any other profile. But it's interesting that she is trying to become the AOC of California by taking all these causes. And LA Times, one of the biggest newspapers of California, is what publishes this article. So
California is an interesting state that way, right? Blue through and through. Republican governance for so long and for such a sustained period. Schwarzenegger was there for so long. It's a very interesting state, California.
And it still has more Republican, 5.5 Republican million voters voted for Trump. And it can actually go, it probably, if Trump was not there and it was a centrist Republican, that number would have gone up to 6.5 million.
That's enough to tip it over. No, not tip it over, but to
but enough to cause a dent in congressional races and governor races. I mean, let's not forget Arnold won the state twice as a Republican nominee.
By the way, they did make a dent at the congressional races. I mean, they bought the houses.
Yeah, so absolutely. But before we end up, and that's what, like I said earlier, guys, about the whole Rinku Sharma thing, I'm waiting for the facts to come out and we'll do a detailed podcast on this. But there is one point where I do see merit.
Can I say something on the Rinku Sharma?
Please go on. Please.
So I saw a couple of videos which are testimonial videos by his father, his grandmother, I think, and his brother. And I say they're testimonial because they're also eyewitness accounts, right? And those eyewitness eyewitness accounts fly totally in the face of the theory being propounded by the Delhi police.
Yeah.
And I don't understand this dichotomy. I don't get why this is being done in the way in which it is being done. Right? If it is a hate crime, it's a hate crime. You have to call it that. You can't underplay these things. Right? And that's what seems to have happened here.
Yeah, no, and
but
I don't buy this logic.
As an offense, there appears to be no doubt about the identity of the people that have committed the crime.
Yeah.
They are, in fact, the ones that are arrested. Nobody appears to be absconding. So, maybe the Delhi police feels that, look, if it isn't a hate crime or is a hate crime, doesn't matter. We're gonna convict them anyway, right? So it doesn't matter.
No, but
it does.
Sorry, go on. Yeah, sorry.
No, I said it does matter.
Yeah, it does. No, and we cannot come up with this old Sharad Pawar theory where he said that he invented a bomb blast to make sure that to give that, I don't want any communal violence or something. Boss, the state, I think, should be ready to prepare, to stop this from happening if there is a flare up. But the state cannot just not talk about the facts also. And I don't agree with bracketing the same thing together, but I do see the merit in the point of a lot of people who are saying that why is it okay for you to outrage at the arrest of Disha Ravi, but not even to say a word about Rinku Sharma if you are in the business of covering news or in the profession of journalism. We are commentators, right? We are not journalists. We'll talk about issues, and even we are talking about both the issues. But if you are a journalist, if you are in the news media organization, if you see I'll talk about one and not, then you're not a journalist. Then you're just an ideologue who's talking about ideology.
I am a bit confused about that. They're not connected cases at all, right? I think what we're talking about here is that you should be covering everything, and you should be covering it with the same zeal and the same pursuit of truth that you would cover.
Not even that. Have a proper report. Have a factual report. I don't want Rajdeep Sardesai to do a 9 to 10 show if he doesn't want to.
No, I'll tell you what they end up doing, and you've hit the nail on the head on this. They just turn around and say, "But this is what the Delhi police is saying. We're not looking behind this." Boss, in Hathras, you want to go dig deeper and deeper. In this other one, you want to dig deeper and deeper. Bring the same zeal to this. There are testimonial videos right in front of you. How do you square that up with what the Delhi police is saying? Why don't you go to the Delhi police and haul them over hot coals saying, "Is this a hate crime or not? Why is the family saying this? Do you have evidence of the fact that, in fact, months ago and for several months, these campaigns had been initiated in the region, in the area for collecting funds for the Ram Mandir? Is that what upset people? I mean, come on, this is
this Harsh Mandar and crew do this Karwai Mohabbat. Why doesn't he take his Karwai Mohabbat crew and talk to the family now and see what their perspective is, right? Do they? I mean, this is my point. Na, ki, they talk about tyranny of distance, but today they are not talking about something that's in the backyard in Delhi. They're talking about something.
Harsh Mandar ke paas bhi ek toolkit hoga, aur us toolkit mein funding ke alag rules hoga.
Absolutely.
Those funding rules don't accommodate Rinku Sharma.
That's actually true. But while I end, we always end with one recommendation. Any book, movie, TV show, series that you've seen, heard, read about, and you want to discuss, or just recommend to our listeners or viewers?
Yeah, I'll do a Netflix series and a book. On the Netflix series, just because I've spoken a lot about investigative abilities and how investigation is to be conducted, one of the best that I've seen in terms of how it's presented in the UK, at least, is the Netflix Duty, or the Line of Duty. I think that's what it is. You've just got to look at the investigative interviews that they conduct. They're just fantastic. I mean, that's the kind of policing you'd want to see, right? And as a book, this year, all I have done is, at the start of the year, 1st January, my gift to myself was Vivek Debroy's Mahabharat, unabridged translation. Yeah. And, before you even get into the main story, because once you start reading it in this format, it's just, this is no, B.R. Chopra. Let's be clear. It's just so comprehensive. Right? But if you just read the introduction, it's so brilliant, it's so deep, and yet it's so simple. And I would highly recommend that people get onto this and read this as well as they can. I think it's the sort of reading project that will take a year, at least a year. So it's totally worth it.
Absolutely. And I don't even credit, by the way, B.R. Chopra for Mahabharat, for the lines. I do Pandit Narendra Sharma and Rahi Masum Raza.
It's a show that still stands up. If you watch it even now,
Absolutely. But you can see Dr. Raza and Pandit Narendra Sharma's influence in the words that because they slip into their movie writing thing and then
And the quality of acting. Yeah, some of these guys are stage actors now, so they could present it.
No, and also casting people, movie actors in like small roles. You had people like Raj Babbar coming in for a walking appearance, even someone like a Goga Kapoor coming in as a villain and things like that. And you can see because these guys are like, हाँ भाई तू set पे है 2 दिन के लिए आजा हमारा TV show चल रहा है kind of deal. You know, we are surprised. This is true Punjabi producer के ऐसे भाई हाँ 2 दिन कर ले यार क्या है तुझे क्या है you know kind of deal. So, but anyways, my recommendation is actually going to be a Netflix show called Criminal United Kingdom.
I watched Criminal as well.
Yeah,
so because maybe the Line of Duty is more dramatic because Criminal is only the interview, but the Line of Duty has the events around which show you the offense itself, and then therefore the questioning and the manner in which the questioning arises. Exactly. So it's more sort of more masala to it and more fun to watch.
Exactly. So that's why I gave the prequel and the sequel both. Since you gave the sequel, I gave the prequel, just the interview itself. But both are fascinating watches and give you a very different. And some of the British series.
Really, I mentioned it only because I wish at some point we are at that investigative standard so that we can protect our fundamental rights better. Because today, the jurisprudence of this country is compromising fundamental rights at the altar of accepting that your police is limited and your institutional capacity, state capacity is limited.
No, and one last thing I'll want to leave with, and hopefully then we'll get our judicial shows, and this is probably a pet peeve where it's not like you don't need have the urge to insert forceful humor with the judge. Like I never watch an English show where a judge is joking around or something, right? Because Saurabh Shukla played a phenomenal judge in Jolly LLB and Jolly LLB 2. They feel like they're going to insert this humor into every single legal show that is made. So, you are a lawyer, so you can tell me if I'm wrong or not. Some of the lawyer-based shows in India are absolutely appalling. Like my sister's a lawyer, and
try pulling those stunts in a court, even in a magistrate's court. Try pulling them. See what happens to you.
Yeah, they're like suits taken on like narcos or something like that.
I understand. Magistrates, the older ones at least, they are exactly like your father or your principal, who वैसे डांटते. When they get pissed off, they'll scold you in exactly that tone and tenor. And it doesn't matter how old you are, you're below them. You feel all this doesn't work.
Absolutely. But thank you so much, Nikhil, for joining. I know we've gotten about 15-20 minutes over time, but this was great fun discussing.
Thank you so much, Aadit. I really enjoyed myself, and I hope we can do it again in the future.
Very soon, hopefully. Well, all you guys, please like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, and do check out Nikhil's tweets at @Twittindercall and his perspective on many issues that dominate the world, and especially while the India-England series is going on, watch us bantering on Twitter all the time. So thank you all, and we'll be back soon next week.